Is a painful season in politics over, or has the tide turned on how wide the partisan divide may be?
It's really unfortunate for the country that these are the folks who get the press and show up in the news.
Former Congressman Jason Altmire examines the landscapes for President Biden and the nation's capital. We're also diving into state politics just a couple of weeks from the start of the legislative session in Florida. State Rep Paul Renner is with us, and so is Florida Democratic Party Chairman Manny Diaz. Thanks for joining us on This Week in Jacksonville. Yeah, good day to you. Jason Altmire is now president and CEO of Career Education Colleges and Universities. The former congressman and author lives in St. Johns County and joined me to talk about the start of the President Joe Biden era.
Impeachment trial really was a distraction for President Biden. I'm sure he would have preferred that not be on the agenda. It had to be because the previous Congress had sent those orders over to him. But it really diminished his effort to appear to be bipartisan, want to work with both sides. There are significant challenges in the country with regard to COVID. The COVID relief package in the Congress was put together in a very partisan way. It's unlikely to get many, if any, Republican votes. And I just don't know that that's the way that President Biden had hoped his new administration would start. I think he wanted to set a new tone. And unfortunately, it's looking to some like it's just more of the same as it's related to partisanship and polarization.
When we looked at, a first 100 days for a new administration, why is that so important? Because it sets the tone for what's going to happen over the term?
First 100 days is important because FDR, in his first 100 days, did more than any other president we've ever seen because of the incredible challenge he was facing with the Great Depression. And so every president since then has been, kind of compared against him based upon that first 100 days. Of course, right now we have a significant challenge in the country with COVID. We are moving on from a president who was extremely controversial and polarizing and different than any president we've had before. And I think Vice President Biden wants to set the tone by getting off to an extremely fast start and moving forward, into what are some extremely challenging times.
One of my neighbors asked me, hey, is President Biden, is he really more centrist or is he really extreme? Because I see these executive orders. In some ways, the new administration has to set out and say, I'm going to reverse some of these policies or I'm going to change some of the policies from the previous administration. What's your view on these initial actions? Are they farther left than we expected or are they more centrist like President Biden said he would be?
When you think about the politics of President Biden, it's difficult to define a centrist. Who is a centrist? And on every issue, is there a middle path? But I think what's most important when you think about the way that he has operated throughout his career in politics is he is somebody that likes to work with both sides. He likes to compromise. He likes to hear different points of view, and he wants to incorporate other points of view into the decisions that he makes. And I think what you've seen in the first few weeks here that he's been in office, as these are long simmering areas of discontent for the Democratic Party. And I think he is wiping the slate clean from the previous administration. The executive orders are aimed at letting the Democrats know that he's moving forward in a different way. But I think once that is behind him and we start moving into a more collegial atmosphere, working with the Congress, President Trump being out of the picture, I think President Biden will be seen by the American people to be more of what I know him to be as a bipartisan centrist who's willing to work with both sides.
What about those edges of each party, the extremes? We've seen it certainly over the last several years, but are those becoming more the norm where those voices that are the loudest are the farthest to the left or the right?
I hear this question a lot because we had Marjorie Taylor Greene from north of us in Georgia was stripped of her committee assignments, a very rare move because of some extremely controversial and incendiary statements that she had made in her past. We have Congresswoman Boebert from Colorado, who's made a point of carrying her gun around with her on Capitol Hill, which members of Congress are allowed to do, although it's not legal in D.C., seems to be stirring the pot. On the left, of course, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad and threatening to run primaries against Democrats who don't see the world the same way that they do from the insulation of their own districts. And I think you're going to see more of this. Unfortunately, our primary system leads us to electing these types of people. And it's really unfortunate for the country that these are the folks who get the press and show up in the news. And, what happened in the Capitol on January 6th, it really is discouraging for those of us who want to see a Congress that can work together.
We haven't gotten to visit since what happened on January 6th. And as someone who served 3 terms in the nation's capital, boy, how did that make you feel? And where are you now that we're more than a month removed from that?
I was just incredibly appalled and shaken by what happened in the Capitol. Of course, I spent a lot of time in that building. It's incredibly significant for the country. The rest of the world looks at that building as the symbol of America, the symbol of democracy in our republic. And to see what happened within our own borders. And a couple of weeks after that, I went to the inaugural, and it was my 8th inaugural. I've been to a lot, and I've never seen anything like the security, the military grade razor wire, and the thousands and thousands of heavily armed American troops. And it just struck me, we're protecting us from ourselves. This is not a foreign attack that we're fearing. We're literally armed to protect us against our own people. And that is just devastating when you think about it. And unfortunately, I don't see that situation improving anytime in the future. There is just such animosity between the American people, and we have to find a way to move past it.
Speaker Pelosi said this week that she wants a 9/11 style investigative commission on what happened at the Capitol and the riot there. Do you support that? Is that a good move? Does that play into the conservative side saying, no, this just divides the country more?
I think you can't pretend like it didn't happen. That was one of the more significant days, certainly in recent history in America. And we do need to get to the bottom of how it happened and who was responsible. Whether it merits a 9/11 style commission and the partisanship that goes along with the way that Speaker Pelosi is approaching it, maybe I wouldn't necessarily take that path. But we certainly have to ensure something like this never happens again, because people literally lost their lives. Hundreds of people were injured. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it's obviously not helpful for governing the country. We have to prevent things like this from happening.
All right, coming up, he's in line for leading the Florida House, and he's from Duval County. State Representative Paul Renner is next on This Week in Jacksonville. Stay with us.
Here's something the insurance companies don't want you to know. When you hire a personal injury lawyer, on average, you'll get 3 times more money than those who don't. Now you know. There's only one Morgan & Morgan. ForThePeople.com.
Your all-time hero. Your once-in-a-lifetime chance to finally ask that question.
Okay. Precious Baggins 25.
You know, I've always wanted to know.
What's that?
But if slow upload speeds were to ruin your only shot, just remember, you're not a bad fan. You just need better internet.
Got my ears done and everything.
AT&T Fiber delivers a faster internet experience with up to 20 times faster upload speeds than cable. Get AT&T Fiber. Plan starting at $35 a month for a year. Limited availability in select areas. Call 1-877 only ATT.
Goodwill Industries is proud to have served North Florida for over 80 years. Your donations allow us to reinvest in the lives of people in our community, people like Kathy.
I was getting out of prison, and I had to get my life together. Goodwill, when they hired me in 2009, they gave me that chance that I need.
She's the example of where you can come out of that and what you can be at Goodwill.
They changed my life for the better. Yes, they did.
We are Goodwill, removing barriers to employment.
Why am I so calm right now? Because this isn't a spy thriller. This is a Nissan sales event ad. Right on cue. This Rogue has more standard safety technologies than that RAV4. It's almost too easy.
Hurry in for a low $229 per month lease on the 2021 Rogue.
Tick-tock, time's running out.
Looking for fresh, informative health news? Go to BaptistJax.com and click on the Juice section. Test your health knowledge with our monthly quiz from Baptist Health. Go to the contest page on News4Jax.com and you could win a $25 gift card.
From barrier barrier-breaking artists and athletes.
To trailblazing travelers and freedom fighters.
Black history is our history.
A closer look at how our history is shaping our future.
Tuesday, live at 7 a.m.
At Fair & Farah, it's all about listening.
It was like I had a listening ear. You make everything so simple where you don't have to worry about it. If you need somebody that's there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, choose Fair & Fair.
Fair & Farah, here for you, here for good.
Hi, Miss Furno. Are you okay?
There's a man following me, and I just don't feel comfortable.
For the moments that make you look over your shoulder.
I have notified the police. I will be holding with you, and I'm here for you.
How this high-tech hair tie could get police to your location faster than calling 911 for a fraction of the price of a gun.
This is no slight on the police or their dispatchers, but that response was so quick.
Really?
And the different versions of the device for people who might not wear one of these. Smart Armor, Tuesday on the 10 o'clock news. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
State Representative Paul Renner was elected for Palm Coast in that area. He grew up and practices law in Jacksonville. We spoke this week about the upcoming legislative session in Tallahassee.
That's true. And certainly inside the Capitol, we have COVID protocols to protect everybody, including the public. And so it's quieter inside, but we do on the House side have an opportunity for people to register in advance and come in and speak to us because we need to make sure we're hearing from all voices. And so we have made arrangements for that, and it's been working smoothly. Our members test every week, and so it's so far so good.
What about the changes that you'll have to see? So we just talked about, some security and probably health and safety protocols, but the budget has to look radically different than what we saw a year ago, right?
It does. We had a very strong economy and a very strong budget going into March, and so obviously there was a precipitous decline when businesses shut down to respond to COVID that resulted in a sharp decline in revenues. And so we're dealing with that now. And even though some people say, well, look, the federal government's going to print money and send it to you and make your budget problems go away, that's not quite right because we have what we call non-recurring and recurring issues. And those recurring ones are the permanent obligations that we have. And while the federal government can give us a lot of money this year, that's for 1 year only. And so we really have to make sure that we're in structural balance. We were briefed by Ben Watson here recently. Florida enjoys one of the few states that enjoys a AAA credit rating from all the credit rating services. And we want to keep that. If we need to borrow money for some major project, we get the most competitive rates. And so we have to make sure that we keep our fiscal house in order, and we have had to draw down on some of those rainy day funds. We need to build those back up, and all of that means that we have to continue to tighten our belt as businesses and families have during the pandemic.
What do you see as the major thrust of this legislative session? Is there one particular area that you're involved in, or you say, hey, we've really got to nail this idea or this topic?
I think it's broad. The speaker set out an ambitious agenda. One of the things I think everyone's excited about is his bill to support literacy and has provided for children that are struggling in K through 5 to have books delivered with some tips and help to make sure they're on grade at reading level. And the data shows that 88% of those that drop out struggled at the third grade level in reading. And so we know that you have to read to learn. And that's one of the bills that I'm very excited about and many other things that we're doing that I think will move Florida forward in terms of improving our education and just our state in general.
There's a bill that's gotten a lot of attention already. It's coming from the governor and regards penalties and process for people who protest. How would you describe that? And are you supportive of that? Because we're hearing a lot of folks say that they think it's wrong.
Well, we have to draw a bright line, and I think everybody agrees that the freedom of speech is absolute and has to be protected in any kind of legislation. But it also is a true statement that we cannot have political violence, no matter what your perspective is. And that bill is content neutral as to perspective. It simply says, if you want to advocate, you have to advocate in a nonviolent way. And when that advocacy turns to violence, and in particular, we saw over the summer and on January 6th, police officers being attacked by protesters. That is not a peaceful protest. That is not the First Amendment. That is political violence that we see in other countries, and we don't want it here. And so it's really about making a strong statement that you can, in America, shout your views, and I'm going to come up and defend those views, even if I strongly disagree with them, that you're right to say them, but not at the point that you start, firebombing businesses and attacking police officers and the like. And so that's what that bill is seeking to address. Obviously, it'll go through the legislative process. We do want to hear from people that have any concerns at all about the specifics. And, think of a piece of legislation as a potter's, wheel, and it comes out kind of clumpy sometimes, where we kind of shape it and try to bring it into a position that people can be proud of and feel comfortable that we've landed in the right spot, balancing those two things, because they're both very important.
Last summer, and some of the protests that did turn violent around the country, Jacksonville didn't have a lot of that. There certainly were demonstrations. How do you feel about how it happened in Florida and how people responded to the civil unrest of what we saw in 2020?
Well, I think it's really a statement to the citizens of Florida and the culture we have here that is respectful of opposing viewpoints, is respectful of protests, but is not going to countenance and not going to allow violence. And so our law enforcement stepped in, and I think just in general, you saw people coming in from out of state for that purpose. And I think the citizens here understand that you can shout your views as loud as you want, as long as it doesn't involve an attack on an individual or damage to a business or property. And it's a real testament to the citizens of Florida. And so this bill that we are debating, it just really reaffirms where Florida is. And I think, Ken, you're seeing Florida in a really special moment as an oasis on a number of fronts, balancing our ability to fight the virus with keeping our economy open, which protects people's lives and livelihoods, their mental health, to be able to have their children back in school. It's so devastating and tragic because the kids that are suffering most are those in most need of educational help that need to be back in school. So it's a tragedy to me that around the country that's not already happened, but it's happening here in Florida.
A lot of people are really hopeful to see what's known as bipartisan work done in their state legislature or at the federal level or what have you. What's your word to people about how you accomplish that? Is this something that's important to you, working with your Democratic colleagues in the House?
Yeah, and I think people at the state level, at least, and I share the concerns about the dysfunction in D.C., and they seem to be shouting each other and raising money off of the shouting at each other. In the state legislature in Tallahassee, we really do have good relationships with our colleagues in the Democrat Party, and a lot of things are done in a bipartisan fashion. There are moments where there's friction. And, for better or worse, that's what, oftentimes gets reported because it's controversial. But you would see, if you came up here and just followed it all session, a lot of very lopsided bipartisan votes on issues that are really critical issues to move Florida forward. So I think we have a good thing here. I really hope and pray that we do not become like D.C., where it becomes you get rewarded for being more and more extreme and criticizing the other side unjustly just to make a spectacle, as opposed to resolving the problems that Florida has. And that's what people want. People want us up here solving problems, and they should know that is exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what the speaker's focused on, and the Senate president, the governor, each and every day, and with the help and support and constructive feedback from our Democrat colleagues to make sure that we get it right. And that's what we're here to do.
Renner was first elected in 2015 and stands to become Speaker of the House in 2022. All right, you've heard a centrist, a Republican, and just ahead, kind of the rest of the story. We're going to introduce you to Florida Democratic Party Chairman Manny Diaz. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
At FPL, we're investing in a future Florida can depend on, delivering energy that's not just the most reliable or the cleanest, but also the most affordable. That's America's best energy value working for you. See how at fpl.com/value.
When choosing a lawyer for your injury case, you may ask, does the size of the law firm matter? Well, of course it does. The insurance company, they're huge with unlimited resources. And whether your case is big or small, they're built to bully you out of the money you're owed. But here's the good news. We're big too, the biggest actually. And we're built to fight to make them pay for all that was taken from you. Size is our strength. There's only one Morgan & Morgan. ForThePeople.com.
Great day on the lake.
It is. Lunch is cooking.
And I saved a bunch of money on my boat insurance with Geico.
Oh, yeah?
Fellas, can it get any better than this? Whoa. My old hairstyle grew back. So did mine.
What? I was an 80s kid.
It only gets better when you switch and save with Geico.
Getting your air ducts thoroughly cleaned takes the trained professionals at Stanley Steamer using the most powerful equipment to get the most powerful results. Our equipment goes deep inside your ducts, removing years of dirt, pet hair, allergens, even dust mites. Unlike other air duct cleaning companies, Stanley Steamer cleans your entire system. Just look at how much dirt can be removed. Call today for a free inspection and save $50 on a cleaning.
Stanley Steamer gets your home cleaner.
I embrace getting older. I'm so much more confident now, but I don't love that as I age, I could develop gum issues.
New Colgate Renewal reverses early gum damage for a beautiful, revitalized smile.
I can't wait to see what comes next.
Reverse early gum damage with new Colgate Renewal.
My lips get so dry and cracked, I need serious relief. That's why I use O'Keefe's Lip Repair. It's all-day moisture in one use and is guaranteed relief for extremely dry, cracked lips.
Also available in O'Keefe's Working Hands. Guaranteed relief for extremely dry, cracked hands.
Still a traffic jam. Just better views. Still making an entrance. Just turning more heads. Still your to-do list. Just getting more done. Still packing up. Just a little easier. The Chevy Silverado, making life's journey just better.
Get a $4,250 cash allowance on all 2021 Silverado 1500 Crew Cab pickups. Find new roads at your local Chevy dealer.
At Harrell & Harrell, we've taken on some of the biggest trucking companies and retailers in the country. We have the money and resources to stand up to anyone. Put our resources and experience to work for you. Harrell & Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Florida Democrats have a new party leader, and Manny Diaz is joining us from Miami for our virtual introduction today. The former mayor of Miami, just elected a month ago as the party chair. And Chairman, the headline on Politico said, Florida Democrats elected you, quote, to resurrect the shell-shocked party. Is any of that accurate?
It is accurate. And Kent, by the way, thank you for the invitation. If you look at our track record over the last 20 years, in statewide elections, the Democrats have lost 27 out of 34. If you look at voter registration numbers, the increase during that period for the Democratic Party is 700,000, and yet Republicans have registered 1.2 million. And the big winner are the no-party affiliates who have registered 1.6 million. So in a campaign, you can say that the candidate wasn't good enough or the messaging wasn't good enough or a whole bunch of other things. But the point is, if you don't have the numbers on election day, it makes it a lot harder to win. And obviously, that's been the result of all these elections over the past 20 years. And I think in my case, I think the people that voted for me saw someone who had run a city, a very large city, who had run large companies, large law firms, and brings a management experience that I think the party needs. The party needs to be run like a business. It is a business. Its business is the elected Democrats statewide.
Yeah, so in this national election back in November, President Biden ultimately won the White House, and he won in Duval County. So longtime Democrats locally said, hey, it was a long time coming that the county would turn blue. Is there something that happened in Duval that you can apply to the rest of the state of Florida?
Absolutely correct. And you've got Representative Nixon and Representative Davis and Senator Gibson and Congressman Lawson and Daniel Henry, who's the head of the local DEC, who are really doing an outstanding job, as we've seen over the last couple of cycles. And what they do is they're on the ground, and that's the kind of operation that I'm going to build statewide. We're going to build a statewide infrastructure. The party has not successfully done that. It's a more reactive kind of approach, and the folks that you have on the ground in Jacksonville are the kinds of people that I want to have statewide, who are building an operation year-round and are connecting with voters year-round. The voters aren't going to see us for the first time 3 or 4 months before Election Day. They're going to see us all the time. And so we're going to build regional offices across the state. I'm going to try to build satellite offices in smaller areas in cities across the Panhandle and North Florida. we're going to make this a well-oiled machine and raise the funding that is necessary in order to be competitive and in order to win.
I think one of the things, and maybe we wrap up here, we got a couple minutes left, but let's talk about state office holders, because 2020 was one thing in the presidential election. 2022, this next cycle here. Republicans have held almost every executive and cabinet position the past decade. Nikki Fried is an exception. Do you think that she's in a position where she's going to run for governor? And I mean, she's constantly kind of opposing or pushing back on Governor DeSantis. What happens in that run for governor, and what will Democrats be able to accomplish here in 2022?
Well, we've got to win every single cabinet seat, and we've got to win the U.S. Senate seat that is also open, by the way. Commissioner Fried is an excellent candidate. I mean, she represented the Democratic Party well. I don't know if there'll be others that'll run. I think we've got a good stable of elected officials across the state, and maybe some that are not even elected that I think are thinking about running. They're tired of what they're seeing from Governor DeSantis. They're tired of what they're seeing coming out of the legislature. The draconian laws that are proposed right now that don't benefit the everyday person in our state. We need to change that. Elections matter, and when you elect the wrong people, you get bad results, and people get hurt by that. In fact, in the most recent case with COVID, people are actually dying from poor management.
Yeah, maybe 30 seconds or less. I know COVID is still going to dominate this year like it did in 2020. Is there a solution you see happening in the state of Florida, or do you feel like we're already doing the job to get people vaccinated?
Well, I mean, the solution is not to treat the vaccine as a personal possession that you get to decide whether you go to, yesterday, I think it was in Bradenton, the governor was threatening to pull away the vaccine because people were upset with him about the way it's being rolled out in Florida. This is not a game. People, like I said, people are dying, and the governor should not be treating this as a political benefit for him, but actually as a life-saving tool that a lot of people in this state need.
Chairman Manny Diaz, such a pleasure to get to meet you and to introduce you to the folks here, the new chairman of the Florida Democratic Party. Thanks for your time.
Thank you again for the invitation.
All right, coming up, Chief Judge Mark Mahoney's on the calendar for next week. There's an innovative program in the courts to deal with mental illness in a better way. Pastor John Allen Newman will be with us once again. We're looking at a controversial bill that the governor wants to pass in Florida. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4, the CW17, and online at news4jax.com.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.